am recording this event, and so that way we can post it on the website for those parents who were not able to join us this evening. Um, so the format that we'll follow is simply to go through the questions that parents submitted in the form that we provided in the link to the event. There will also be an opportunity for parents to ask, or attendees to ask, additional questions using the Q&A feature that's built right into Zoom. So you'll find that down in the lower toolbar. On the right-hand side of that toolbar, you can click on that and type your question in, and then we'll respond throughout the meeting. We had just over 30 questions submitted. Several questions were repeat or similar, but what we'll really try to do is dig into your questions to the best of our abilities and give you the answers and information that you're seeking. As always, if you've got further questions after this event is completed, please don't hesitate to reach out to either one of your teachers or a building principal or any member of the panel, any member of the district. Our goal is to be transparent and provide you with information that you need so we can best partner in our work to serve the needs of our students and staff and community of Cedar Springs. So, really starting off, the first question that I'll respond to is why we're here. So the question is simply, will you actually answer the questions or will you push them off? So I don't know what experiences the author of this question has had in the past, but we're here to answer the questions. If we weren't here to answer the questions, we'd be wasting everyone's time. And so our goal is to answer the questions to the best of our abilities. If we don't have an answer, we'll tell you that, and then we'll circle back and make sure that you've got the information that you've got. But I encourage you to just have an open mind and let's engage in some thoughtful exchange of information. So the first question we'll let Stacy Vasco, our Director of Student Services, respond to. The first question is, will virtual ECSE be offered for next year?
So first of all, ECSE stands for Early Childhood Special Education. So those are our kids that are prior to kindergarten, starting kindergarten. And at this time, on April 27 at 7:04, we are not offering it due to the lack of interest of families. If there are families that are interested, we will look at those numbers to see if it is feasible with the staffing, as we had great results for that group of kids virtually this school year. So right now, the answer is no, because we don't have enough families interested.
Perfect. Thank you, Stacy. The next question, we actually got a couple times. Will the COVID vaccine be mandatory for students to return to school in the fall? I meet with the health department once a week. I meet with the team from Spectrum Health every other Friday. I've not heard anything like that. There's been no requirement for vaccines for the COVID-19 vaccine, either for staff or for students, to the best of my knowledge. So, everything that I've heard from the health department and from health experts in the area are that they really want this to be a voluntary vaccine effort. They recognize that the timing of the approval of the vaccine was rather short compared to some of the vaccines that we do require students to have when they enter school. And so at this point, I've, to Stacy's point, at 7:04 on April 27th, there's no talk of making the COVID-19 vaccine a requirement for students to attend classes next year. Chris?
Just to pitch in on that, maybe to ease any fears about that, school districts are required to report vaccinations already, and have been for years. And actually, if we don't have a certain percentage of our students vaccinated, we will actually lose state funding. But one thing that's really important to note is we can't force anybody to be vaccinated for anything. So if you ever have wished to not have your student vaccinated, you can actually work with the Kent County Health Department to have that waiver. We just need the waiver for the school district. That's as good as the vaccination card. Okay, we just need to show the state of Michigan that we've made that effort. I assume this will probably follow along the same lines.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. So I'm assuming this next question is from a parent of one of our seniors. So when can we expect graduation caps to be passed out? Will there be a graduation ceremony? How many guests can we expect to come? So the seniors' last day is May 19th. Caps and gowns are distributed on May 26th. There are hope of having a live graduation event, or a live awards celebration for our seniors. And we're also currently planning on a live graduation event for our seniors and their families. That's a great moment to celebrate. You know, we're going to be limited on attendees based on the guidelines that are set forth and currently in place from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Those current guidelines expire on May 24. And so I would expect some extension or some new guidelines. It would be wonderful if they dropped all guidelines after May 24, but I just don't think that's going to happen. But we'll maximize the number of attendees that can join us and do our best to provide as robust an experience as possible. So some quarantine related questions. So one question is, you know, my kids are on quarantine. There are several questions about students not getting work during their quarantine periods in terms of synchronous work from their classrooms or from their teachers. So Jen, do you want to jump on that? Stacy, do you want to jump on that?
Sure, yep. So we have definitely done some extensive planning for this year. Last summer was dedicated to really streamlining priority standards to making sure that all of the essentials were taught this year. And we did account for the fact that we knew some students would be missing some courses. So that was part of our summer planning. We never could have possibly anticipated the complexities of in and out quarantines. And I think this is not unique to Cedar Springs, it's every district in the whole pandemic is dealing with this same thing. So, you know, we are glad to have our students in person for as much as we're able to, and we're just as upset as you are that some students have to quarantine because of contact tracing. And it's just the reality of the situation. So we know that staff is really juggling a lot of complexity as well. So while your students are home, they have a full classroom full of live in-person students that they're dealing with. And it's really difficult for teachers just to flip their lesson plan every single day to have both an in-person and an online lesson plan. So that takes a lot of forethought and thinking and planning and even some technical know-how. And then to keep kids engaged in that is something that is just beyond our control while we have a full in-person class as well. So as much as we're able, we're catching students up when they return. Please know that our teachers have the essential standards in mind and that they are really leaning into those to make sure that students know what to do, what the essentials are to help them be prepared for the next year. And then our planning for next year is including how are we going to look at the data set to know what students have missed and what the gaps are in order to address that in the following year. Certainly none of us have ever been trained for how to deal with a global pandemic. So this is something that we're learning on the fly and evolving as we can and learning from our colleagues across the region and across the state and across the United States. We really know that best practice is that we look at the data and then are responsive to it. So as always, we would encourage you, if you have concerns about that you reach out to the teacher first. That would be the first line of communication, is to say, I'm just concerned, could you help me understand? And then if that doesn't seem to be addressing your concerns, then of course, reach out to the building principal, who would be the first person who would help that teacher to figure out how to be more responsive and to help troubleshoot with your family what can be a solution that will suit your needs.
Perfect.
The only thing I might add would be that just our staff, our educators from pre-K all the way to 12th grade, they're all doing the best they can. So nothing, ignoring an email or whatever that feels like to you as a parent, that is not what's happening. There may be 12 other things that are the front burner things, and they are going to get back with you. So give our teachers a little grace. They are doing the best they can. We're so proud of the efforts they've done already this year, and we're all in this together. So take a deep breath and realize that what they're doing this year is not just the end all be all. We're going to have some learning acceleration next year, and we're going to really look at all those data pieces to make sure we're meeting all students' needs.
Mm-hmm. And I would really say too, we often hear my students are behind, but it's really that they have not yet had the opportunity to learn some things. So we know that there are things we will not get to this year, and we will make a plan in order to get to them in years coming.
That's such a great point. And we're getting a lot of parent requests for special education. Don't worry, these kids, the pandemic is not developing disabilities. Your student is right where they need to be, getting the services they are, and we are constantly looking at our data and constantly reviewing and revising the way we approach things. So don't worry, this does not mean your student is developing a specific learning disability. It just means they're surviving during a pandemic and trying to learn in the meantime. And we have a great group of educators that are going to support them and walk alongside them every step of the way.
Perfect. Thank you. Stacy, the next question is for you. The question is, why are kids being bullied and sexually harassed in classrooms and in schools while the school does nothing?
That's a really upsetting question. So student safety is one of our top priorities and is directly related to our flight plan, our strategic plan for the district. And that wasn't developed yesterday. That was developed a couple years ago and is a 5-year comprehensive plan. We have clear structures in place for many crisis events and for the handling of unsafe behaviors. We have proactive measures in place to teach students how to improve their behavior through our social emotional curriculum, through our PBIS structures, through our mental health supports, and their connections with those mental health supports, and through our restorative practices. We take each issue very seriously using the code of conduct and our network of supports, both proactively and reactively. So before an incident and after an incident, to make sure everyone has the full supports. Each issue is dealt with individually and thoughtfully. It may not seem like it at the time, but it is. Each administrator is trained in due process investigation techniques and the law surrounding discipline. If you have a specific issue, I suggest you reach out to your building principal, as they care deeply about student safety and the success of those students, and will do their very best to address your questions while keeping student privacy in mind. So that's a very important part. You may not be getting the answers you think you need, but we also have to protect the privacy rights of all students. So we can't tell you what happened to that student, that perpetrator. We can't tell you if they qualify for special ed or what their trauma background was, because we really need to protect all students' privacy. So I would encourage you to reach out to your building principal. And then if you have further questions, reach out to me. I'm on the safety team. I am the director of student services. I'm happy to listen and talk through some of your questions. And each of these issues are handled individually and seriously. So they are not ignored. It may feel like it, but they are not.
Thank you, Stacy. So the next several questions really relate to the mask requirement. And so there are questions like, how can you as a Board of Education move away from move in a way that makes masks optional? Will wearing masks ever be a choice? Will masks be required for next year? Why are you still forcing the masks and testing of athletes when the risk is low and the kids are under 19? Why are you not, as a school, fighting for these kids? When can we invoke our constitutional rights and allow our children and teachers their freedom from masks? When do we start to put our kids first and stand up? At what point will we say enough is enough? When will you unmask our children? Stand up. All students are going to have, or are all students going to have to wear masks next year? It's not good for their health to wear them this much. My kids miss smiling to people. It affects their mental health. When can we unmask our children? My 5-year-old complains that it is hard to breathe. So, I get it. I don't like wearing a mask myself. I've not met anyone yet who loves to wear a mask. And this is a serious thing. We take it seriously. We respect your positions and we respect your thoughts. But the reality is that we must follow the guidelines that are set forth by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. It's not an option. And while those guidelines, those current executive orders that were issued back on March 19, some people have said, well, those orders are unconstitutional and therefore you don't have to follow them. They may be deemed unconstitutional, but we as citizens don't have the authority to deem those rules unconstitutional. Only a judge, only a court of law has the authority in our state, in our country, to deem a ruling or a rule, in this case, by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, or by a law set forth by our legislative branch. Only those individuals have the authority. Only judges in the legal system can declare a rule or a law unconstitutional. And until that happens, we have to follow the rules. I can assure you that the moment that those guidelines are either declared unconstitutional by a court of law, or that the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services rescinds those guidelines, I can promise you that our Board of Education will be acting as quickly as they can to put reasonable circumstances and conditions in place for our students. And so at this point, I am standing. I stand every day. I stand up for our kids. We all do, but I cannot violate a rule. I don't know how much simpler I can put it. So hopefully that captures everything. If you have further questions, don't hesitate to reach out. But we don't have the ability to go in opposition to a rule from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Prom at the high school. So another high school student or another high school parent. The question was, I see you had prom on the calendar, but we haven't seen or heard any information about the prom. I've heard it's just a movie at the Lake Michigan Credit Union ballpark. So the high school student council, juniors and senior class have been working with their class sponsors and Mr. Barenwald and other members of the administrative team over at the high school to provide our students with some type of meaningful event this spring. We didn't really see a pathway to provide a prom. Originally, they had planned to go to Frederick Meyer Garden, but that venue called and canceled because they were not able to host us. So then Mr. Barenwald and the team started looking into other alternative locations and other options. They polled members of the senior class and the junior class in terms of what types of events they wanted to do. They landed on putting together kind of a spring fling event at the ballpark. And really the senior leaders and the junior class leaders did an outstanding job of putting together a really neat evening for their classmates. That event is scheduled for May 7. However, unfortunately, the response to that event has not been as robust from their classmates. So I think as of today, only 8 tickets have been sold. And so we really don't have, we don't have a real clear path to providing that type of spring event for our students. But the team is committed to supporting our student leaders and committed to try to provide some type of meaningful experience for our students to be able to celebrate the hard work and efforts that they put in over the course of the year. But at this point, we're still in limbo in terms of until we identify what the student response is for the event. The next question, we'll let Jen tackle. Will there be a summer school for kids who failed a class? Will it be online and free? That's what I've heard. K-5 summer school. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, Jen.
I just thought I would overview all of summer school so that anyone who's listening has an idea what we're offering this year and what we're excited to be able to offer. K-5 information about summer school went out from principals several weeks ago, And signups are happening now, and we're getting close to capacity. So if you are still interested in that, we would encourage you to respond. And we're excited to be able to provide some great programming for students Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 8:30 until 12:30 in person on campus. And then there are also some ways to engage even from home, some enrichment activities that you're able to get for home. Sixth through eighth grade summer school information was also shared by those building principals. And the focus for that grade span is really on students who need to recover some content. So I'm not sure if this person is a 6th through 8th grade student or a 9th through 12th grade student. I would imagine someone in the secondary level, since you're asking about failing a class. 6th through 8th grade is mostly preparing kids to go on to the rest of their secondary experience well prepared. And again, that information was shared by building principals. 9th through 12th grade summer programming is only for students who are recovering credit on their pathway to graduation. That content is going to be provided through Michigan Virtual University. It is mostly asynchronous, but it does require students to attend in person in order to take their assessments. So that will be happening at the high school, and our staff will be the mentors and the check-ins for those kids to make sure that they are progressing and recovering that credit. That is free due to the additional funding that Cedar Springs received this year for summer programming. So normally that would be something in a credit recovery situation that a family would pay for those credits. And it's usually about $300 for each course. We're able to offer that for free this year.
Perfect. Thank you, Jen. Question about online programming or Red Hawk Online for next year. Can you address that, Jen, please?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So for the grades 6 through 12, we've already sent out information regarding the opportunity to indicate whether you might be interested in an online program. What we're offering for 6th through 12th grade is different than what we've offered this year. And part of the reason for that is that we're seeing a decline in the numbers of people who are interested in it, because we know in person is really the best place for our kids to be in most cases, and we can provide the richest experience for our students. So if someone is interested in 6th through 12th grade online programming, we will be partnering with My School at Kent, and it is a hybrid program. So it does require families to assure that their student will attend in person for several days a week for a 2-hour block for each of those times. So depending on what grade level, My School at Kent requires in-person testing again, so that we can ensure that the data that we're getting is valid and reliable. For K-5, we're just really beginning to explore what that might look like. So today a survey went out to current Red Hawk Online families to ask if they might be interested in, again, something that is a bit more hybrid. What we know about early elementary is that much of what students are learning to do, besides reading and math, which are big important ones, is also learning how to do school. And that is really difficult to do in a virtual setting the same way that it might happen in person. We understand that there might be still a desire for health reasons or other reasons to be participating from home, but we do want that to be a hybrid situation as well. And so our team is working on planning what that might look like. Whether it's a staggered schedule or a rotation or 1 day a week that might be in person. That allows us to really do, again, the assessment piece that we need to do to see how students are progressing and ensuring that we're giving the right services to each student. And then it also allows some social time to happen. So if you are interested in that, we're not asking people to make a choice at this time, because we know that April is a little too early to decide what will happen in August or September, given the nature of this pandemic. We're just asking you to say, yep, I might be interested in that. And we're on a scale of 1 to 4, so that we at least can begin to plan staffing. With that K-5 option, we are hoping, I mean, again, right now on April 27 at 7:25 p.m., we're thinking that we may be able to, depending on the desire from families and the numbers, we may be able to offer our students the opportunity to have our Cedar Springs teachers teaching the same things on the same pace that their in-person counterparts would be learning. So that's something that we've learned, is that there's some efficiency if we do things that way, and we can guarantee a better experience for students. So we're looking to capitalize on that learning that we've had over the course of this year.
Thank you. Chris, I'm going to let you take the next question. Is next year the last year for the teacher's current contract? And then I'm going to have you jump right into the questions about the calendars, because the calendar and the contract are two things that are related. So when will the 2021-2022 calendar be available? Why can't we continue to start school after Labor Day? 4 people asked that question. Why are we having a fall break in October? Why aren't the student half days on Wednesdays? 5 people asked that. And then the last one, again, well, just, why can't the half days be on a Friday or on a Monday? So
absolutely. I'll take it away. All great questions. So the first one about the contract, is next year the last year of the current teacher's contract? The answer is no. Actually, the year that we are currently in, the 2020-2021 school year, is the last year of the current teacher's contract. And a little bit unheard of or unprecedented, at least in my experience, this current contract is an 8-year contract. So this contract started in 2013 and has served the district since the 2013-2014 school year all the way through now. So we, and when I say we, I mean Superintendent Smith, myself, our HR director who can't be here tonight, Mr. Matt Blood, as well as CSEA leadership and the other members of this team popping in here and there, have been meeting and negotiating this contract since December, and possibly earlier than that, actually. So we've been meeting regularly. As you can imagine, there's quite a bit of information in this contract, being that it's an 8-year contract. State of Michigan legislation has changed over the course of those 8 years. And one example is one of the questions we have down below. The number of days required for students to be in school has changed. So Cedar Springs has been able to maintain a 172-day school year because we were grandfathered in by this 8-year contract. Now that the contract's expiring as of June 30 of this year, we have to get in line with the state mandated 180 instructional days. So to answer the question, we're negotiating. We continue to negotiate with the CSEA. That's the Cedar Springs Education Association, the teachers union. And we're hoping to continue to make progress and get this wrapped up as soon as we possibly can. I'm going to jump down to these other questions because I didn't memorize them. There they are. When will the 21-22 school year be available? Today. So this has been something that we have been working on, like I said, for quite some time, and the district was finally able to come to a tentative agreement with the teachers and release the calendar. So what you should have seen released today is a very good representation of where we believe we'll be next school year. And again, that meets the state requirements for the number of days and eventually the hours that students need to be in school now. Why can't we continue to start after Labor Day? So the 180-day question really is answered by that. We can expand the school year into June, but we chose to start prior to Labor Day to be in line with a lot of districts in the state and definitely in the county. And you'll notice that when you look at that calendar, that our last day of school is actually Friday, June 3rd. So we end earlier in the year, and that is why we're able to do that. So again, just getting those 180 days in. Why are we having a fall break in October? That was a discussion that really came to fruition, again, in negotiations and through discussions with the CSEA. It's something where, we start earlier. We start on August 23rd this coming year, and we're going to have a professional development day on that subsequent Monday. So the idea to have that Friday for staff and students to really catch their breath. You'll notice there's not 2-hour early release days scattered every 2 weeks in this calendar. So it's really just an opportunity for everyone to just catch a breather, as they've gone for really 2 months straight at that point. And if memory serves, I believe there was a discussion about, I believe conferences are that week. So it's just a nice way to provide a break for the teachers as well. Why are the student half days on Wednesday? So this was another thing we discussed. We looked at data. We wanted to provide the most value and the best opportunity for our teachers to be fresh. A lot of districts have gone to half days on Wednesdays, and really the reason, now keep in mind, there are 7 of them throughout the school year, so it's not the same frequency as the 2-hour early releases, so they're quite more infrequent than what you're used to with the 2-hour early release days. But getting that professional development in on a Wednesday afternoon is just a much more meaningful time for teachers. They're fresher in the middle of the week than a Friday afternoon to have them be doing that important work. So we spoke to other districts, we spoke to CSEA, and that was the determination that we came to through that research. And the last one here, for the next school year, why can't half days be on Friday or Monday? I listened to the board meeting. I didn't realize they were switching to Wednesdays. They worked well on Friday thus far. It will be a big inconvenience to have them in the middle of the work week for any working household. We definitely understand, and we hear you. Again, I just urge anybody that's feeling that way to keep in mind, I believe we have 16 early release days on the Fridays this year. We're moving to 7 of these, so it's less than half of that. And I'm sure that it'll take a little bit of getting used to, but if you can imagine on Friday afternoon, I know a lot of times on Friday afternoon, it's a nice time to get away early, and that's probably as parents how we're feeling. We can get to an early weekend, but having that important work for teachers to do, we just felt that the Wednesdays would be a great time to do it. Scott, if I'm missing anything from our negotiations or calendar, please feel free to chime in on that.
No,
especially as those Fridays and Wednesdays go.
No, I appreciate that, Chris. Thank you. Other than we'll also provide supports for families through Campus Kids who have struggles finding childcare for their kids on those half days. And so we'll work with families to support them.
Yep. And one thing we were really looking to do was provide a more consistent calendar. I know that anytime students are released early from school, it's disruptive, because if you're a working parent, your kids are going home far before when you're getting out of work. So that was one thing that we really wanted to do, was cut back on the number of days that were those different days. So we're pretty proud and happy with the 7 of them rather than double digits.
Perfect. Thank you. Ken, I'm going to let you jump in and take the next one. Talking about our construction projects, our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. The question is, what is the school doing to prepare for cleaner air in the buildings as we prepare to probably unmask or have a mask choice in the future?
Okay, what the schools have done this year so far, what we're doing is we've opened up our outside fresh air a little bit more than what it normally is, allowing for better air exchange per the recommendations of the CDC. And we have started changing filters this year at a quarterly basis. So we're keeping up on the fresh air this year. Next year, part of our bond work that we're going to be doing this summer is to redo the Cedar Trails unit ventilators and the heating and cooling systems, which includes new filter regulations where we can put the bipolar ionization units in, put some UV lighting in where needed. So we're going to be doing that. I have placed a call, and we're working with GMB, looking at other units right now in our schools, seeing if there's anything that we can do to help speed those along, to get those brought up that we want to do during the bond. But at this time, it's just a matter of following all of the CDC recommendations, getting that fresh air in and getting that exchange going.
Yeah, there was some great research published April 14 from MIT, and they just talked about, they looked at different ways to help reduce the transmission of germs and viruses through the air in an enclosed space. And they talked about how air exchange is more valuable than air filtration. And so really looking at those exchange rates, how are we swapping out the existing air with new fresh air in those classrooms? Can we do that as quickly as possible and as frequently as possible? That gives us a greater return on the investment of keeping those spaces more healthy for our students and for our staff. So very good. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about a big picture question. So this is a really big picture question. It's what planning has already happened for next year? And we'll, we can kind of break it down and talk by group. So, Jen, if you want to take the academic services piece, Stacy, you can talk about student services. Chris and Ken, you can talk about bond and construction projects that we've got on the agenda.
Sure, I'll start. So from academic services, we continue to ground all of our work in our strategic plan called Flight Plan and the most recent data set we have about students and their learning. So as always, we try to be responsive to the data that we're seeing. We're committed this year, and if you attended the board meeting last night, we presented the possibility of a new K-5 literacy resource, which is evidence-based. That will take a lot of planning and a lot of support. We're working on aligning our instructional practices in K-5 math and exploring our secondary math pathways. Our secondary teams will begin to learn about literacy strategies to use in each content area to ensure that students comprehend the complex text that they're reading. And our continuous improvement process always keeps our focus on positive climate and culture. We're learning, adjusting, and continuing to be responsive to the needs of our students and our teachers as we look at our data.
So from student services and special education standpoint, well, really from education as a whole, we are all planners. So we plan 2 years ahead, 3 years ahead, 4 years ahead, 6 months ahead, 2 days ahead. We plan. So we have been working on things for next fall, just like we would any other year. And then we layer on pandemic supports and how we do some recovery type services and acceleration learning in the fall due to COVID. So we have all the regular planning plus now all the COVID planning. So from a student services department we are looking at behavioral data. We are looking at early warning indicator data. We are looking at our PBIS data. We are looking at all kinds of pieces of data so that we can best plan forward for our students coming in wherever they are from what they've been through the last year. Some of our students have had very limited access to virtual, but couldn't come in due to medical reasons. Some of our students were here almost every single day. Only during that couple week of closure did they shift to virtual. So we have a full continuum, and we're trying to look at that full continuum of needs and make a plan moving forward for that, from our mental health department to our special education department to our paraprofessionals and their training and supports. I mean, you name it, we are trying to come up with a plan to address it. And that is no different than any other year.
From a business and human services standpoint, Mr. Blood and I have met for months now talking about staffing for next year. We've both run projections on student enrollment for next year, which is more difficult than ever with the number of students who are online, in person, left for homeschool or some other reason. Will they come back? Won't they come back? Obviously, all of our revenue, or a lion's share, 80% of our revenue is tied to student enrollment, at least general fund. So there's been a lot of planning from that standpoint that's gone on for months. Retirement, staffing needs for next year, class sizes, class counts, all of that. Once we have that all set, I'm done working on that with Matt, and we have the best idea. This is really the busiest time of year for me in business services, because I have 5 or 6, actually in Cedar Springs, 6 different budgets that I have to finish up this current year, but then also project for next year as well. And each one of our general fund budget is over 4,000 individual budget lines. So that's talking about wages and pay, that's talking about retirement costs, FICA, workers' comp, all the different insurance costs, salaries, supplies and needs for the district that fit into our plan. Ken needs to spend plenty of money there for facilities and operations, athletics, you name it. Then there's the food service fund. So there's the community services fund, there's the debt services fund. There's a lot of different things that go into it. So I'm spending nearly all of my waking time at least trying to get to those budgets and planning for next year. In addition to the bond work that we'll talk about here in a moment that we've been working on for a calendar year at least. We just had an S&P Global Ratings call because we'll be selling our first round of $32 million in bonds actually in 2 weeks. And part of that call is they require a 4-year or 5-year projection of district finances. So that shows how far out that I project, and then provide that for Standard & Poor's. So they rate how financially sound the district is, and how good of a bargain it, or a sure thing it is for investors. But enough about that. On to bond construction. Ken, I'll let you take a little of the magic here.
Where we're at right now is we've just recently opened bids and accepted and interviewed our contractors, and the board approved bids to have us move ahead with the middle school parking and drive reconstruction. That's going to be starting this next week or the week after. So this is one that's on a fast schedule to get started, and we have to have it all finished before the August 18th deadline. So that one is moving along. We're going to be initially working on two new entrances, coming in off of Northland Drive. One of those I'll hit back here in a little bit on. The other one is the Cedar Trails mechanical bids have been accepted and awarded. We will be replacing the HVA units, the unit heaters in the classrooms, the heating coils in the air handling units, the chiller, the boilers. We're getting a whole new system so the schools will be more comfortable. That's where we talked about having the new ultraviolet lights and the bipolarization added into those units there also. That will be happening throughout the summer, and that too will be a tight time frame to finish up just before school gets started.
Furthermore, on the bond work, and I'm so sorry to jump back in, we've planned for this. We purchased the equipment for Cedar Trails back in January so we could get ahead of it and make sure that there was no holdups that would restrict us from students coming back into the buildings this fall. We have a draw schedule and a plan for this entire bond, which goes out into 2025. I could talk for an hour on it, but I won't. But this question asked, what planning has been done for next year for bond construction? We're planned out for 4 or 5 years. Everything from the financials to when the work will be done and when we'll have to pay for it.
Perfect, thank you. Ken, you mentioned some new drives going in at the middle school. Those thoughts actually came out of a parent forum that we had during the fall of 2019. One of our parents, who's a former retired state trooper actually, and his wife were sitting in the room, and we were talking about trying to improve the safety of the drives at the middle school. And this couple came over with a napkin and said, "Hey, have you thought about this?" And so we took that napkin to our designer team from GMB, and we kind of built upon their idea, but it was just a great way to infuse some additional thinking into our work. Ken, can you talk a little bit about, there was a question that was asked in regard to traffic. Can anything be done to tell people not to stop traffic on Northland Drive by the middle school in the morning? It's very dangerous and an illegal thing to do. So it's a little bit of West Michigan nice maybe going on there. Is there anything we can do to help with that?
There's always something. I'll be talking with Deputy McCutcheon, trying to work with the Kent County Sheriff's Office on that. We'll keep an eye on that. We'll pay attention to that out there. It is something that hopefully with this new drive reconstruction kind of alleviates. The buses will be pushed down further away from the intersection, further away from the mobile home park across the road. So hopefully that's going to help alleviate some of this too when we're done with the construction.
Yeah, so we're trying to spread the flow out, to spread the congestion out a little bit at the middle school. The next question, let's talk a little bit about student supports. Why are parents ignored when they ask for help and supports? Why are online students and families not supported like we were told we would be? How are we going to handle students who were homeschooled last year because of the pandemic, who may be behind? And then another question about that just came in our Q&A piece. How do homeschooling parents for this year, what do they have to do to enroll their students for next year?
All right, I will start. As we said before, it's always important to start with communication with the teacher. So if you are feeling as though you are not receiving the support that you were hoping for, please reach out to that teacher. and give them a chance to help. That's by nature who educators are. They got into this because they love students and want to help them. So please give them that opportunity to respond. If you don't find that to be meeting your needs, then of course we would encourage you to reach out to the principal, and if you need to one of the directors here, and then eventually perhaps to the superintendent. But please begin with the teacher first. Again, everyone is doing their best. So, you know, sometimes teachers are receiving hundreds and hundreds of emails a day, and it is tricky to get through those when you have 25 or 30 students, or if you're a secondary teacher, 120 students that you're seeing every day. And communication, probably most of you know this, it's just multiplied during this pandemic because we all want to reach out and we all have something we need some help with. Online students, you know, we started this school year by saying online schooling is not at all the same as in person. And that is still true today. There are just some constraints that make that the reality. It can't be the same. So again, you know, the level of support might be different, but if you are missing something that is critical to your students' success, we need you to reach out to that teacher. One of the things educators know is that a productive struggle is what we see in the classroom. So we watch students learn by figuring things out, and they don't always figure it out the first time because they're learning, and that's what learning looks like. Sometimes as a parent, you might be seeing that and it might be something that's unfamiliar to you. So you think, oh no, something's wrong. And really it's just how we learn. It's how our brains learn, by struggling through some things. That's not to say we don't want to help you. So certainly, again, reach out to those teachers if you need some additional support. In terms of students who were homeschooled last year and who may be behind, always we meet kids right where they are, and we want to move them at least a year or more forward in their growth. So no matter the situation, we use the data that we have in order to make the right decisions about the instruction or the additional intervention that might be needed in order to help students be successful. So if you are coming newly to Cedar Springs, and I saw that question in the chat as well, please reach out to our district office folks. We're glad to help you enroll, and we already have started that process for fall. And it really is quite simple, and we're glad to get you started and help you have the right things in place so that you're ready to start in the fall.
Yep, I just wanted to jump on that last part really quickly. If you go to our website, csredhawks.org, right here along the top, enrollment, there's a place to click if you want to start today, which at this point in the school year, that's probably few and far between, but you can go right here to enroll for fall. And we have really revamped the website through the help of our new communication specialist. Amy McCarthy's done a fantastic job and worked with our central registrar, Chrissy Brott, to make this an easier process than ever. You can click on Start Enroll for Fall and go through the process. And then right here, if you have any questions, you can click on Chrissy's email or call her directly on her office line. So tried to make that process easier than ever.
Perfect. Thank you both.
The only thing I would like to add about homeschooling is we have a small handful of families that move from homeschooling to Cedar every year. Oftentimes that comes with worry because it is different. It's much, much different. As Jen stated, we are trained as educators to do rigor, and a mentor long ago told me it's learning on your tiptoes. And that is what our students do every single day. So it does feel differently from home when you're not a trained educator to see that struggle. And then you feel for your child because you think that that's not a good struggle. But ultimately, it is. They're learning on their tiptoes and they're reaching for more. And that is exactly what we are hoping to do every single day in our district. So no worries about homeschooling. If you have data to provide us, that would certainly be helpful, of the things that you have taught them, the curriculum you use, any online supports you've used. So that's also very helpful, because we also have families that come in from homeschool, and then within a couple weeks of school, they request a special education evaluation because they think their student might have a disability, when in fact it was different or slower, lesser curriculum than we use. So the students are all of a sudden in a little bit of shell shock because that's not what they've been learning all along. So it's not because your student has a disability, it's because they just need to catch up a little bit, and that's okay. We are expecting them to learn on their tiptoes, and we will do everything we can to meet them where they are for all students to succeed.
Perfect. Thank you. So the next question is around the bomb threats. So the question is, with all of these bomb threats, why are we not told how it went afterwards? Students need to see these people were punished and didn't just get a day off from school. So it was interesting. Our high school principal, Mr. Ron Barenwald, has been a high school principal for 14 years. He went 14 years without having any bomb threats. And then in the last, since March 11, we've had 2. The 2 threats were very different. And it's a challenge, as you can imagine. The complexity of managing the situation, making sure that our students and staff are safe, that we have the proper resources on campus, and that we are communicating that information as quickly as possible, but not communicating misinformation. And so, you know, as far as the bomb threats go, the first one on March 11 came in. It was came in via email. The law enforcement agencies were able to obtain a search warrant for the email account. They did their best to track that account back. They traced it back to an IP server out in the Midwest, in the middle of the Midwest, but then really ran into a dead end. At this point in time, we don't have any further leads to follow on that, on the bomb threat from March 11, but it is still an open investigation. Some complexities around that day, and you know, I'd shared that information with our families in follow-up communication, but you know, the threat came in. It was very vague. We did not have access to a canine team from Kent County, so they had to bring a team in from Traverse City. We just didn't, based on information from law enforcement, you know, the decision was made to cancel school for all students for that day. April, you know, came through on the 16th, excuse me, the 19th, so last Monday. That was a different threat. It was a different situation. The threat came in from via phone. We were able to use video surveillance to quickly review the building to see if there were any intruders in the building at all from the end of school on Friday to the beginning of school on Monday. We did have access to a canine team from Kent County, and so that dog and handler were assigned to report immediately. The threat was specific to the high school. And so because of all of those factors, again, the recommendation from law enforcement was that we could go ahead and based on their professional judgment, we could, as long as our students and staff from the high school were safe, we could have we could have classes on campus as scheduled in our other buildings. And so, you know, unfortunately, again, with the first threat, the second threat, you know, they traced the number back, but they've not gotten any tangible leads beyond having the actual number from which the call was placed. Another district in our area in the county received a similar threat from the same phone number, but it's not a local phone number, you know. And so at some point in time, until we get further leads or further information, you know, right now the investigation is at a standstill. We want the same thing that you want. We want consequences for these students. It's incredibly disruptive to thousands of students and thousands of families, and it's not okay. You know, and so we're going to continue to work with law enforcement, and as tips come in, we'll share those tips and let the law enforcement agencies go ahead and follow up on those tips because it is a criminal matter. The next question, let's take one off the chat. So it's similar to some that we've had, but slightly different. You know, as you said, the teachers have full classes and are so busy. Why isn't the district providing resources? how are the kids who are quarantined making up the missing lecture? And if we should give the teachers grace, why are the kids not given grace? My child is graded as failing in their assignments before they even return to school.
So again, I would say certainly reach out to that teacher to ask some questions about that. That's definitely not the expectation that we've set forth. And if that is not a satisfying experience, then please reach out to the principal to gain some clarity about what can be done to move forward in the right way. The resource that we would have to give teachers is a double as long workday, and that is just not possible. It's not part of the current teaching contract, and it's not part of what's feasible as a human being. So, you know, we've talked a lot to our teachers and our staff about being balanced and mentally well, and it certainly has been a challenge this year for all of us to do that. We know that all of us sometimes respond in a way that's not our best. And so we would ask you to help us get better every day by giving us the chance to have that feedback in a constructive way.
I'm just gonna, this is a little bit outside of my realm, but I'm gonna just push in here real briefly about the piece about my child is graded as failing their assignments before they even return to school. I know in my experience as an educator, there's times that as grades are entered, they're entered as a 0 because they're missing. It doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be made up. And again, I don't know the specific situation. I'm a ways away from it. But yeah, I would hope and I would imagine, and I couldn't imagine it wouldn't be the case where even though it may be reflected as a failure at a certain time in PowerSchool, that teacher's just trying to send the message that, hey, this is missing, let's get this in. So I know that that can look that way. I've dealt with that over the years. Just keep that in mind.
Perfect, thank you. The next question came in on the Q&A piece. Will graduation look similar to last year's, or will it be the whole group of seniors graduating together? Also, how many guests will be allowed to graduate or to attend per graduate? Our goal is to provide a graduation experience similar to the one that we provided in 2019. So we want to have the whole class together. We want to have families available. We are going to maximize the space available in our stadium. And so that may be that we reconfigure where the graduates sit, reconfigure where the stage is, reconfigure how, where our attendees sit. But we are going to maximize, because we know this is so important. We want to maximize the number of attendees at the event to celebrate this great accomplishment with our graduates. Unfortunately, some of this work is dependent upon the guidelines that expire on May 24. And so, you know, right now we're scheduled to have graduation on June 3rd, but we'll definitely make adjustments if possible. You know, if we see that the current or the extension of guidelines are going to expire on June 8 and we expect an increase in capacity, you know, we might push graduation to June 15, for example, so that we can have more people in attendance. You know, we want to maximize the number of people attending, and we want to maximize the quality of that celebration for our students. So the next question is in regard to Black Lives Matter. So the question is, why multiple teachers, or why do multiple teachers have Black Lives Matter flags in the classrooms and in school? What is the policy about Black Lives Matter's emblems in school? And what are the repercussions for them in school for teachers and for students? So there was an incident, there were two incidents of Black Lives Matter posters in classrooms back in January. We went to those teachers right away. Because Black Lives Matter is not a part of our curriculum, we were within the guidelines as a school district to ask them to take those posters down because we were very mindful that in some members of our community, they see Black Lives Matter as the group of hooligans that that rioted in downtown Grand Rapids and looted and destroyed buildings. And so, we asked those individuals to take those signs down, and they were removed. I'm not aware of ever any Black Lives Matter flags being up in any classrooms, and I'm not aware of any current flags or posters that are up in classrooms. If you have information that indicates that there are current situations, please reach out to the principal and let us take care of it. What's the policy as far as Black Lives emblems in school? It's different for students than it is for teachers. For teachers, it has to be related to curriculum. If it doesn't relate to curriculum and it's a disturbance, we can ask that teacher to remove that item. So whether it's Black Lives Matter or a 4-leaf clover, it doesn't matter. If it's not a part of the content or the curriculum, we can ask that teacher to remove that item if it's creating a disturbance. Similarly, for students and for staff, as far as wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt or wearing a hat, if it causes a disturbance, then we can ask that student to not wear that item of clothing. But we don't have a specific policy or protocol against someone wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt or a Camp Hitler t-shirt or whatever that incident or whatever that the content of that messaging was. If it's a disturbance to the education, which is what we're all about, we can ask for that information for that content to be removed. So the repercussions in school, we would first ask them to remove it. And if they complied, if they were compliant with it, then that'd be done. We'd talk to them about it. We'd use restorative practices. We would explain the why behind asking the student or asking the staff member to remove the item. And then we would hope that there would be a level of understanding and the item would be taken care of and it wouldn't be an issue. If the teacher refused or if the student refused, then there would be disciplinary consequences using progressive discipline moving forward from there. And so we would treat this, then it becomes more about insubordination than it does about the actual message that is on the poster or on the t-shirt or the hat. So hopefully that answers the question. If it doesn't, please reach out and we'll engage in some more conversation around that. The last question that we've got is kind of a big one, and it's more of a statement that it is a question. I was thinking about re-enrolling my daughter in CSPS for the 21-22 school year, but I'm having major doubts. I follow a few parent groups and it looks to me like the school is not any better organized in dealing with COVID-19 than it was last year in April. School shuts down a day prior, leaving parents to have to work in a major panic. Making kids keep wearing masks for 7 or 8 hours at a time for 7 days in a row is problematic. These are young people and have to cover their nose and mouth for long periods of time, and it's not healthy. Even the CDC agrees with that. I want to know what the school is going to do about mask wearing, considering that other schools around us don't require elementary students to wear them in the classrooms. Also, I have friends with kids at the school that are complaining about this administration. It's not having an open dialogue with parents, and it's hard to get a hold of administrators. I hear of sexual harassment between students and the school does nothing. This is completely unacceptable. There aren't a lot of questions in there. Cedar Springs Public Schools might not be the right district for you. And I say that with respect. And so I think, I would encourage you to reach out to gather more information. And if this is the right choice, then fantastic. We'll partner with you and we'll do everything we can to exceed the expectations to help your student flourish. If not, we'll do everything we can to help support you find a better spot to provide your student with that opportunity to flourish moving forward. So that is all that we've got as far as questions. We've responded to everything in the Q&A. We're 5 minutes after 8. So we'll wrap up this forum. If you've got any other questions or have any other wonders, please don't hesitate to reach out. Like Jen has said, like Stacy said, like Chris has said, and Ken has said, you know, go to the source first. So talk to the teacher first, then the principal. If you don't get satisfaction there, then work it up the line. That's the most efficient way to help address your questions and concerns. So I thank you so much for being a part of this event tonight. It's through partnership that we're able to best serve the needs of our students and really, help make them be all that they can be moving forward into the next generation of excitement in life. So we thank you so much and we wish you well. Take great care. Bye-bye.